Hi everyone, and welcome to the Virtuzone Academy Q&A. Today we're going to be talking all about insurance for SMEs, and we have an amazing panel of experts on insurance with us today. But I'm just going to give everyone a couple of more minutes to log on to the webinar. So just give us 2 more minutes and we'll begin. All right, let's start. So thanks so much again to everyone who's attending today. We're super excited to present this special edition of the Virtuzone Academy Q&A, where we're going to be focusing on insurance for SMEs. It's a subject that we at Virtuzone are very often being asked about, and I'm very, very thrilled to have 2 experts on the panel today to answer all your questions. So first of all, thanks so much for submitting all the questions in advance. We'll be going through as many of them as possible today, and feel free as well to ask all the questions that you may have throughout the webinar. There's a chat feature on the side of your screen, so feel free to put any question in the chatter, and we will do our best to answer them as well. Before we kick off, let me just first introduce our panelists. First, we have Suraya Turk, who is the managing partner at Legal Circle. We have Ramzi Gurani, who is the managing partner at Petra Insurance Brokers, and I'll be a moderator today. My name is Christian Petersen, and I'm head of marketing at Virtuzone. Suraya, why don't you sort of start out with introducing yourself and Legal Circle in a bit more detail?
Okay, so my name's Suraya Turk, and today I'll be joining you in this discussion about insurance. I'm the managing partner of Legal Circle. It's a UAE-based law firm. Essentially, we practice most practice areas of law across the UAE. Our specialty is really in corporate commercial transactions. We've got real estate, employment, technology, IP matters, and banking and finance. We do specialize, well, not specialize, but I guess we can provide services from startups all the way through to MNCs, look at how to mitigate their risks while doing business and ensuring that they maintain successful businesses over the years in the UAE and across the board. So I'm delighted to be able to be on this panel today. We'll share with you more information about our website, our social media handles, and of course how you can ask for more information if you need to post this webinar. I'm sure Christian's going to be helping us out through the webinar with that. But I look forward to speaking with you today and answering some of your questions around insurance and doing business in UAE.
Thanks so much, Suraya. Ramzi, over to you. Can you tell us a little bit more about you and Petra Insurance?
Yeah, sure. Petra Insurance has been around in the UAE, specifically Dubai, since 1966. It's a family business. I'm the second generation in the family business after my father started it. We were traditionally underwriters, so it was just basically just doing the car insurance, marine insurance, everything. And of course, as times change and go by, we change with the times as well. I came on about 8 years ago to kind of get that fresh blood in, and so we adopted new forms of technology into insurance, and a different way of handling clients and their needs in such a fast-moving environment that we're in now. And it's actually moving a bit faster, and we all know what we're going through right now, and we had to be there for the clients, and happily so. We handle all kinds of insurance, from personal insurance to business insurance to corporate needs. We can do it all, from life insurance, car insurance, and all that. So that's what we do.
Thanks so much, Ramzi. I also wanted to mention that on the chatter on your right-hand side, at the very top, you can see the links to both the Legal Circle and Petra Insurance websites, as well as the links to their LinkedIn channels as well. So please go and check them out and follow them as well, so you can stay up to date on everything that's going on within insurance. We're also very lucky that both Suraya and Ramzi has provided some very special offers for everyone who's on the webinar today, and we'll be pushing them live shortly. For the first half of the webinar, you will see Suraya and Legal Circle's offer, and for the second half, you will be seeing Ramzi and Petra's offer. So thanks so much, Suraya and Ramzi, for providing that for us today. But I think without further ado, let's get started. We have lots of very good questions to get through. So Ramzi, the first one is from you. It's from Priya, who's asking, what questions should I ask to get the right policy at the right premium?
That's a very good question. For the main reason behind doing all this is to make sure your claim is covered if there's a claim, and we hope there's no claim. And that's where clients, there's a contradicting thing where if there's no claim, why should I pay for insurance? But the point of insurance is actually peace of mind and for you to be able to take risks that you wouldn't normally take, because that part of the business is being covered from the insurance perspective. Now, the questions that I would ask, and we encourage clients to ask this, and we sometimes answer those questions without them even being asked, is first and foremost the experience that insurance company has with claims that you have as a business. So it could be very specific to you and to your business, and what has been some of the case studies or experience with claims specifically. That's number one. Number two, what are the exclusions in the policy? And first of the clients need to know what the exclusions are and not just take it for granted that everything is covered, because that just doesn't happen. There's no such thing as a insurance policy that covers everything. And I've heard that so many times, and it gets me really worried when we hear their claims are being rejected because they thought everything was covered. So the first thing they should ask is, what are the exclusions, and to actually read it and ask which exclusions can be included at no extra cost or at a minimal cost, right? And the other part of it is what benefits are covered and how can you extend the benefit. For example, if it's a coverage of whatever it is, could be professional indemnity insurance or some kind of business insurance that covers for Dubai. Maybe you might ask, if I want to get covered throughout the UAE overall, is there an extra premium for that, where it's more of a comprehensive coverage if it's required? So those are the questions that I would ask, and then that's it.
Thanks so much, Ramzi. Priya, I hope that answers your question. I think it does. Suraya, the next question is from you. It's from Suresh, who's asking how to convince owner for protection during financial crisis. So I suggest that, maybe Suresh works in a company and he wants to, he wants to know how to convince the owner, to protect, I guess, his employees perhaps during a financial crisis. I guess it's a little bit of an open question. But do you have an answer to that?
Yes, I do. So as you pointed out, that is a little bit open-ended. And so the first question is, the first comment rather is that insurance needs to be purposeful. So you need to ask yourself, what am I trying to ensure the risk? What are the risks that we want to ensure? What are the risks that are potentially or possible in my activity or line of work or in business? So different industries will require different insurances for different purposes. And so the question is, what activity or what business are you in? And when you were trying to convince your owner, what exactly what insurance do you need and why? Because ultimately an owner is going to be looking at what the bottom line is. How much does insurance cost me? Why do I need it? And usually it's justified if you need it because it's going to be a cause of greater or bigger losses down the track. So that leads me into, if we're just looking at general business interruption to businesses, say during COVID, and I assume that that's what that question is asking. So just for general business interruptions, because most companies during COVID have had financial difficulties and have looked at insurance policies to see whether they're covered for any of those losses. And essentially it comes down to what policy do you have and what does that cover you for, and really looking at the fine print, because unless an insurance policy says it covers business interruptions and specifically has in there situations that are related to COVID, for example, then you could be covered. But otherwise, it's not an automatic, it doesn't go automatically that you're covered for, say, interruptions. So with that question, we really need to have more specific, a more specific knowledge about the circumstances. But I hope I've given you generally how to approach an owner and and convince him as to why you might need an insurance cover. It is, what is it for? What is the purpose? And if you can find a purpose, I'm sure you can convince him.
Thank you so much, Suraya. And also, I want to thank everyone for all the questions you've already posted in the chatter. Please keep them coming. We will do our very best to get through all of them. And also just wanted to remind you that I have published the first offer in here on the platform as well from Legal Circle. So please go and check it out either now or afterwards. But yeah, let's jump on to the next question, Ramsey. It's from Adi that has two questions. First, what are the regulatory requirements for professional indemnity insurance for consultancy work in the UAE?
So that's a very good question. Depending on what industry you're in, there are certain industries where you have to have professional indemnity insurance, or we call it for short PI. Now, PI insurance is meant basically for where you give advice and that could go wrong, and that's where the insurance would come into play. So, for example, lawyers, they give advice and they don't mean to give bad advice, not malicious, but it could happen where the advice led to material loss, some form, money lost or whatever, Same thing that comes up with accountants, auditors, tax consultants, including insurance brokers, right? Whether we cannot renew our license without professional indemnity insurance. Otherwise, it comes back to if there's a contractual need. If you're in a certain business that requires you to get PI insurance, professional indemnity insurance, that's not mandatory by the regulators or the government, but it will probably be needed for you to get it for a contract you're trying to get. For a good example of this is in event management. So a lot of times event management, they don't need to have PI insurance to get their license, but sometimes if they want to get a contract, it's stipulated in the contract that you have to have this plus other types of insurance. So that's where it comes down to. And where's the second part of that question?
So the second one is how is the premium for PI insurance calculated?
See, that's a very interesting question as well. It's a very gray area with that. Car insurance, you have the rate of the insurance, and then the value times that. With both of them, add up the other add-ons like rent-a-car, then you get the final premium. That's very simple. PI is not as simple. Depends on your risk. What's your annual turnover? Where do you cover geography from a geographical perspective? History of claims, of course. So there isn't a set rate. It is really on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thanks so much, Ramsey. Suraya, we will jump on to the next question for you, which is from John. Who's asking, what are the risks of not having insurance? I guess another broad question, but a very relevant one.
Exactly. So I guess the first question to ask is, what are the mandatory insurances in the UAE or your local laws, depending on where you're taking out insurance? But in the UAE, there are two mandatory ones, health and motor. And so if you don't take out health insurance, for example, there is a risk, and I believe that's about 500 dirhams a month for every uninsured month. So that came out in the recent laws, which made health insurance mandatory for all residents across UAE. So when we're looking at what the legal risks are, that's what the legal risks are for the two mandatory and compulsory insurances in the UAE. Now, generally speaking, what are the risks? Well, it depends on what your business is and how high or how great those losses can be. So, for example, if you're in construction or you're in a consultancy, say, for example, medical or even in entertainment business, they require you to have, PI insurance, for example, because the risks are potentially high. So this is about the commercial risks. And essentially, it's a question of if you don't have it, what can you lose? In some industries, you may lose that contract if you don't have PI insurance, for example. So apart from the legal mandatory risks, it's a commercial risk that you need to assess on a case by case.
Thanks so much for that. Before we jump on to the next question, I just want to run a little poll to get everyone engaged here. So you will see it now on your screen. Basically, we would like to know, are you looking for insurance for an existing business, or are you planning for a future business. I think we have a lot of entrepreneurs on the call today. We typically have on our webinars. So please go and let us know if you are looking for insurance for an existing business or for a future business, if at all, of course. Ramsey, let's jump on to the next question while all the answers for the poll comes in. This is Omran, who would like to know what insurance policies are required for the construction industry, and is insurance value compensable on demand or activated through investigations by the insurer?
Okay, great question. And this is especially with the claim part, and I think that's what people should be focused on when they take out an insurance policy. So when it comes to the construction industry, there's something that's called Contractors All Risk Insurance, or for short CAR. And from that, you can also take professional indemnity insurance, because there is some advice that is linked to some parts of the construction industry, and plant and machinery, usually that's there, and third-party liability, along with workman's compensation for the ones that are working within the site. So those are the things that the types of insurance policies that I would look into, and they're usually based on the contract at play, the value of the contract that you are going into, and that it's actually that simple, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Yeah. And the second part, the second part, the second part to that is, well, you know, for sure that has to be activated through investigations, through a loss adjuster, which is being hired by the insurance company if there's ever a claim, especially if it's a big claim, or even a medium claim. The right process has to take place. Suraya can talk, of course, a bit more detail later on how to, when there's a claim in need, what is to be done, but everything has to be done in the right way. The client cannot just simply say, this is the damage, and so I must be paid for this. There has to be the right process, the right evaluation, the right investigation has to always be done. And this is to the benefit of the industry and to other clients, because if there's a fraud, the premiums will go up. Very simple, right? So the right process has to take place at all times.
Of course. I can see there's a few of you who's asking where to find the poll that I just published. On your right-hand side of the screen, you should see a button that says poll, or polls. I hope you can find it. Otherwise, we'll run another one later on the webinar today. Suraya, the next question is for you. This is Albert, who would like to know how to get the right advice on terms and conditions.
Sure. Well, when it comes to insurance policies, it's always about reading the fine print. And I don't say this condescendingly at all. But essentially, you need to be asking the right questions. So it always begins with, why am I insuring? What interest or risk what risk event do I think is a possibility in my industry that I want to protect myself from? So ask those questions to the insurance companies, get those insurance policies in draft, have a read of them. Make sure the clauses, particularly relating to the mechanism of claiming and the risk event occurrence, are clear, that they're not vague, there's absolutely no ambiguity, and the processes and procedures are set out and laid out very clearly. Essentially, I mean, most often there's not much room for negotiation when it comes to policies, but just being aware of what they are, what are the risk occurrences, how are they triggered, and then what are the mechanisms. This is what you need to be, be very sure and aware about, and compare across the policies. So don't just go with the first one. Compare policies, because there are differences between them. So always check the fine print. And of course, if you're unable to understand any of those clauses, ask your lawyer, get a trusted, for example, speak with your insurance brokers. They're meant to be objective, and the purpose is for them to be finding you the right policy for your need. So between your insurance broker and your lawyer, I think you can't go wrong, and hopefully you can be guided to select the right policy and get the right advice.
So please call Suraya or Ramsey if you have issues with the fine print in your contract.
Exactly, my number's over here now.
We're getting so many questions in the chatter as well, so I want to take a few questions from the audience now. The first one, I think for you, Suraya. This is a Maya who would like to know, I wanted to know if I need any special insurance if I want to have a coffee shop in Jumeirah.
Okay, great. So being in Jumeirah means that you're on the mainland, and essentially on the mainland, the insurances that are required, apart from health and medical, and Ramsey can add to this, but there is no specific ones that are compulsory for a coffee shop. But what I'd say, and Ramsey can add to this, is to look at what are the risks of, in the restaurant and what I might need to take out as a policy to protect me from those. So it could be fire, it could be employment liabilities in terms of anybody becoming hurt as a result of, their business and activities within the restaurant. Ramsey, you could probably add to this, but there is, I don't believe, a mandatory policy that they would need to take out for a restaurant in Jumeirah. Is that?
Yeah, there's nothing. You're right. It's not mandatory, but some places, like let's say in malls, but it doesn't apply to her. It would need some form of insurance, liability insurance within the mall itself. So, but over there, I don't think there is. However, we do recommend, a business insurance policy that is tailored for cafes and anything to do with food. Basically, so there's food and poison liability in there, and then that's a very specific cover for that line of business for cafes and restaurants and whatnot. And also, if there's shisha, that's a different story. There has to be, it's a different risk as well involved in these cafes, if there is such a in this one.
All right, Maya, I hope that answers your question. I want to jump on to another question from the audience. Ramsey, I think this one perhaps is for you. It's Joe who's asking, do I need to have insurance if I'm not employing anyone? I'm just doing online work.
Well, so I'm assuming Joe is talking about medical insurance. If he's not employing anyone, then there's nothing to insure, but he's got to insure himself. He's got to be medically covered, medically insurance covered. If his business is, for example, a one-person, accounting firm, that's mandatory PI insurance as well. So it depends on the trade license, not with regards to the amount of people that are working in that business, right? So it could be one person to 300. The premium might change because the risk is a bit higher, but depending on the industry, the insurance can be taken out.
Okay. The next one, that's from Chloe. And I think, Suraya, this would be one for you. Chloe's asking, is there any insurance that can be taken out in order to protect entertainment or event agencies against COVID cancellations? There's probably a lot of event business owners who have questions like this these days.
Yeah, that's right. And so we actually did a webinar just talking about this, and a lot of the questions did come from the entertainment business. So essentially, this is, rather than insurance, this is more about the contractual relationship you have with the counterparty. Now, the issue which arose during COVID was whether this came under a force majeure event. So a force majeure event is an event which occurs that is outside the control of both parties, which is unforeseen, and occurs and then stops one party from being able to effectively fulfill their obligations. So essentially what happens is, this is not so much an insurance question, but rather a force majeure question, and looking at what the civil code says in the event of a force majeure. And so unless it was, and this now goes into really another topic, which I'm not sure is the right webinar for it, but, is there any insurance? What you can do is speak to your insurance policy, and again, policies and different insurance brokers such as Ramsey, and again, possibly look at a business interruption insurance, which perhaps covers in the future such type of events, but you'll need to look at the wording of those clauses very closely, and they will need to stipulate very clearly if they do cover events, financial loss as a result of business interruption because of COVID. But just generally, there isn't a specific one. And I know that during COVID, it was the case of looking at the force majeure clauses in the contracts rather than the insurance policies, because I doubt that most of them would have had those clauses already built in. Remember, when it comes to insurance policies, they must be very clear and cover very clearly what type of event will trigger that business risk and ability to claim. So I hope I've answered the question without going too much into force majeure. But
can I add to that, please? Can I add to that?
Yes.
Because Suraya makes a very good point, especially with the business interruption part. You know, when you have business insurance, business interruption is not automatic. You gotta it's an extension. You have to pay more for it. And I'll give you a story that well, first of all of our clients did not get business interruption insurance with the pandemic clause or a virus or one of these for viruses such as COVID. If it were to affect that business, they had business interruption for other things like earthquakes or floods or whatever, right? But here's a story that I wanted to pass on to you guys. It's an actual case study that happened where insurance does work. So Wimbledon, the tennis tournament every June, since SARS, I think SARS was back in 2003, I believe. So they were freaked out that one day this is going to affect them, and they were paying about $2 million extra a year for the past 17 years for the business interruption part, right? And their obviously Wimbledon got canceled with a bunch of other things, and they took out that specific clause for viruses, for pandemics and all that, and they had a claim this year of $141 million US. So they paid 34 million, and they got a claim of $141 million. Now this is a big case example, but any business can learn from that. Learn that if they budget for business interruption for certain things that means a lot to them, they'll be well prepared for any kind of potential issues moving forward.
That was very smart of the Wimbledon.
Very smart. Very smart.
They learned from the SARS event. Very
they budgeted for it.
Clever.
It was part of their yearly budget, and they didn't think about it. It wasn't an extra cost, and that's the key.
Mm-hmm.
I guess in these situations, it's kind of hard, even to think those thoughts. Like if you haven't been exposed to a pandemic before, you might not think about, how to insure yourself against a pandemic or a virus like this, right? But I guess while we're sort of on the topic of, let's say, uncertainty, Lizzie had a question on what kinds of insurance can I take to protect my business from financial uncertainty. I guess it's quite related to the other question, but would you have anything to add to that question?
Ramsey or Suraya? I mean, I can take it. I'd say very much similar to what we said before in terms of, what is it that is it financial uncertainty? Is it that you've had now a business interruption because of COVID? And as Ramsey was saying, that is an additional protection that you would need to take out in your insurance policy to cover for that. But just generally, I mean, is there a policy for financial uncertainty, Ramsey? I don't think there'd be a policy that would be that wide enough. It would have to really be specific in scope to cover a particular risk event.
Well, like I said earlier, you can't. There's no such thing as covering everything, so you kind of have to pinpoint what you want to cover and go from there.
Oh, Ramsey, I think we lost your sound.
I can't hear him either yet. No, I can't hear still.
A little bit of scratching. I think.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can.
Perfect. I didn't know what I did. I just okay. So it must be like the conspiracy theorists don't want me to talk about insurance. But the thing is, where was I? Okay, so the key now in business, and this is past insurance, past anything, is you have to know, be sharp as to what you expect to happen in the future. So, for example, there is probably going to be, unfortunately, I'm going to say this, and this is the fact, there's been, on average, for the past 20 years or so, there's been a crisis every 10 years, or since 9/11, from what I remember, 9/11, 2008 financial crash, and then this year, COVID. Every 10 years or so, there's something wrong that happens that could affect everything to do with business. So every business owner has to think about this, and it's just a fact of life. And I think insurance can play a big part of this. A law firm's going to play a big part of this and all that. So I just wanted to clarify that. And based on that, you can pick the right insurance, budget for it, and inshallah, things work out. You don't have to use it.
Could you take out an insurance against a financial crisis? Would that be possible? I mean, in terms of how do you determine if it's a financial crisis or not? But I think there are certain parameters in terms of GDP growth or decline and so on. But would that be possible in any way?
I mean, if you ask me, I don't know. For me, since the financial crisis, they stopped insuring financial crisis stuff. For example,
they will stop insuring.
There was a policy in place. I think it's somewhere around the world, but definitely not here. Where if you weren't there's credit insurance. Credit insurance is legit, but there was a policy where you were able to for developers who weren't developing basically, or developers who ran off with the money. There was insurance for that. That's done because there was too many claims. It became unprofitable for insurance companies.
Exactly.
And also there's a job loss insurance. It's very rare to get that here, to be honest with you, but it was quite common years ago, and so that just simply so the things that happen now, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. All right, I think let's end the first poll here. I'll get you the results now. So we're asking if you're looking for insurance for an existing business or planning for a future business. 72% of everyone who's on the webinar today said they're looking for insurance for an existing business, and 27% are looking for a future business. So it seems like we have lots of business owners on the webinar. That's great. I think let's jump on to one of the next questions that one of our guests had submitted prior to the webinar. This is Christine, who is asking, how would I know if I have the right coverage for my business? Suraya, do you want to start out with that?
I could. Well, I think that Ramsey is probably the best
should I pass it on to Ramsey?
for insurance coverage. But again, my advice to people is always to be purposeful in what they're doing. And right now, given that we are in a semi-financial crisis, if I can say that safely, or just, even with the financial pressures that everybody has at the moment, they're going to be looking at how they're spending their money. So even when it does come to insurance, I mean, as Ramsey was saying before, different policies, and there's obviously premium levels will cost more and more. So, how do you, the question was, how do you take...
how would I know if I have the right coverage for my business?
Yeah, so you'll need to ask the right questions. You'll need to identify first, what are the risks that you think are potential and high in your businesses? Then look at the policy coverage and say, right, does it? What triggers that claim, and how is the claim triggered? So then by looking at the policy, you can see exactly what the mechanisms are there and what that stipulates. So, and really looking through the fine print. So that's my advice, obviously, from a lawyer who looks at things very contractually. It needs to be purposeful, and looking at those policies very clearly will help you to understand what your need is and then how that policy addresses that need. Ramsey, you probably want to add to this as well.
Well, I always say look at the fine print, because that's exactly where people get screwed over. Exactly. And again, you have a lot of mis-selling out there in every industry, right? So a lot of promises, and that's why I think the very first question was a good one, is what questions you should ask. And the key is always just look at what are the exclusions, and then look at those and see if it makes sense for the business or not. I've seen some horror stories, like just simply crazy, where the exclusion basically nullified the whole policy. Like there's no point in the whole policy. And I just thought it was kind of sad, because businesses had to pay like tens of thousands of dirhams, and legally they were required, there was nothing, there was no legal case for them to claim against the insurer, because it just was all in writing. And I think that's what it comes down to. I think if you have a big policy, listen, my main advice is always get a good insurance broker and get a good law firm with you all the time. That's the key to life. And then obviously the accountants and everything. And then the keys, the broker, our job is to understand your needs and to be proactive with what questions you should ask and to get done. And our job is to negotiate the terms with the insurance company, right? And that's what we do. And at the end of the day, if there's a claim, we're held responsible. We should be held, as brokers, we should be held responsible because we help out with the claim and we actually get money back and all that. And that's why, we working with the lawyer as well, working with the law firm to read the fine print if it's needed is important. Critical.
talking about horror stories, do you have any other horror stories to share? I think we're all quite curious.
Well, I have so many. I get one horror story a day. Like, so,
I think it's just the industries we're in.
I mean, it's just crazy, right?
It's always a horror story. It's always a mess to try to clean.
Like, let me tell you a very quick one, if you guys don't mind. In Chicago, their main, this is actually sad, but I don't know. I won't laugh, but I thought it was just ironic. They wanted to go cheap this year on their pandemic insurance coverage. All right, it was a university in Chicago. And they wanted the cheaper premium because they were paying for many years. It was the complete opposite of Wimbledon. And then basically their main line of business was actually students from China. And then this year, they chose not to take out that policy. I'm just giving it to you in a nutshell. And they got royally screwed, basically. And I think it's a horror story because the management was poor. And I think it comes down to management of your business. And that's what it comes down to, right? They lost big time.
All right. Well, we'll save the horror. Maybe have more horror stories for later.
Exactly.
It also comes down to how risk averse you are. Some people want to take that risk. Other people just don't rely on it because they know the cost of it. And so it's really a question of that.
Okay. I just saw that in the chat, Tim, he's asking if there are any special pricings or packages for startups. I think, Suraya, you have something for Tim?
Yeah, we absolutely do. So I think if you look at the offers, you'll be able to see, I don't know if it's there now.
Sorry, I just changed it to Ramsey's offer, actually.
Oh,
but
that's okay.
By the way, we will make sure everyone who is on the webinar today will receive an email either later this week or early next week with your offers as well. And sorry, by the way, to everyone who is on the call right now, I have uploaded Ramsey's and Petra Insurance offer. So you can see it on the right-hand side. If you click on offers, go and check it out. It's a limited time offer on health cover abroad. So go and have a look. I hope Suraya will be with us again in a minute. Ramsey, David has a question for you. He's asking, what affects my insurance costs?
Okay, that's a big question. But the main thing is the type of risk you have in your business, whatever that is, right? The activity is the first thing. How many transactions you do, or the amount of activity. So the more activities that you do, of course, it's considered riskier because you're doing more. So it really is on a case-by-case basis for determining the price. So it just is what it is how much is the insured value, whatever that is, that basically what could you lose if it was a write-off? So let's take an example of a car. A car is, let's say it's worth 100,000 dirhams, and then it's a sports car, which means you're most likely going to drive fast and most likely going to get into an accident. It's just part of what has been studied on. If you're unfortunately, they have also data on nationalities. So there's certain nationalities that get into accidents more than others. Okay, and so there's a rating for that, and it's not based on discrimination. It's based on data, right? So it's all about the price or the value of whatever you're insuring, and the risk factor, which is the rating, if you will. So that's what it comes down to, and this for all lines of business, and this includes medical insurance, business insurance, you name it.
Thanks so much for that, Ramsey. We're just getting Suraya on the call again. Just 1 second. All right. While Suraya is coming back on, let's jump on to one of the other questions that was submitted in advance. So Akhil was asking, in terms of medical insurance prices have been constantly increasing. How can you manage or control the pricing to avoid a substantial increase in your renewal terms?
There are three things in life that's going to be for sure. Before we always used to say two things: death and taxes. Now it's death, taxes, and increased in medical insurance premiums every year. That's just going to happen every year because the inflation is quite high. People are overusing the medical facilities. The medical facilities are increasing the prices of their services, which increases the premium. So it's a domino effect. And I'm an insurance broker, but I can speak on behalf of the insurance company. They don't make much money off of medical insurance. There's a ton of claims that happen that they barely make much money off it. But if I was to own a business, there's a few things that I would do to cut the cost of the medical insurance. One of them being co-insurance. So instead of having a low deductible and no co-insurance, you can reduce the premium by having a 10% co-insurance or 20% on outpatient services, as an example. If you have a business that has got quite a few number of people, you can do categorization. So instead of everybody having a A-class category, if you will, you can have Class A, Class B, Class C categories where you can lower the premium. You can stagger it for your team. And also very important is reduce the misusage of the plan. So for example, education is very important. The main reason why insurance premiums go up for medical insurance is because people overuse it. And sometimes they don't even need to go to the doctor, and then the doctors, and I'm sorry if there's any doctors here, but not all, but some, they take advantage of it. There is a bit of quiet, under the table fraud, like, here, take this medicine, or I need, let's do this MRI or whatever. And that's just, and I've seen crazy stories about that where, the cost of the MRI is $2,000, but if you don't have insurance, don't worry about it. We'll make it $1,000 for you. That kind of stuff. I've seen it many times. I've heard that many times. So my main thing is education. Educate your staff. Educate yourself as to what is happening out there. Because just because you're getting that perk, it will hurt the business next year when the usage, or what we say, the loss ratio, which is the amount of claims used divided by the premium is high. Because at the end of the day, the insurance it's a business. It's got to make profit. So they'll increase the premium the year after.
That is very true. Mm-hmm. All right, Suraya, we have you with us again.
Thank you. I'm really not sure what happened there, because I could see and hear everybody very clearly, but I could see them saying, "Oh, she's gone." I'm like, "No, I'm still here."
You're back on.
Okay.
I think this is a question we have touched a little bit on earlier today, but for the ones who have joined the webinar later, this is a question from Paola, who's asking, is insurance mandatory in the UAE?
Okay, yeah. So we did touch on that a little bit earlier, but that's okay. For those who have joined probably a little bit late, essentially there are two that are mandatory in the UAE, the mainland, and that's the medical and motor insurance. There are, however, some regulatory bodies. So depending on what industry you're in and the laws that govern and bodies that govern those industries, there may be a requirement to take out insurance. So some of those, for example, if you're a legal practice in Abu Dhabi or Dubai, you're required to have professional indemnity. Same thing goes for medical practitioners, accountants, auditors, insurance companies, and insurance brokers, Ramsey. Of course, it's under the banking finance and construction professionals. So generally we see in the construction industry, if there is, it's not a statutory requirement, but there is a contractual requirement generally to do business within the construction industries that there is insurance, and it normally stipulates the amount of the policy must cover as well. So I hope that answers that question for you, Christian.
I think so.
Perfect.
At least it made it much clearer for me. I wanted to take a question from, let's see here, from Faisal, who was asked in the chatter. He says, I'm the sole owner and the sole employee of my consultancy company. Some large engineering and consulting companies insist that I'm covered with professional insurance. And then he asked here, so I guess based on that, can they insist, like, let's say the clients you're working with or your partners, can they insist that you have like certain types of insurance? Perhaps that's for you, Ramsey.
Yes, they can. It's you're in a contract. You're there's an agreement between two parties or more, and there's basically saying, yeah, we're happy to work with you if you have A, B, C, D conditions, basically. And part of those conditions could be insurance. So yeah, and it's a take it or leave it thing. So if you don't want the contract, you don't want to work with this person, you don't have to get insurance, but you don't have to work also with that particular person. So it's in the rights of anybody to request whatever they want to request, and it's up to them as well, their right to say, no, I don't want to pay extra for this insurance, and that's it. But I know a lot of people, when it comes down to business, they'll get the cheapest possible insurance to satisfy the contract or the contract obligation. So that's basically an answer to that.
So let's say so Faisal has a contract for around $50,000 for consultancy services. Yeah, would I guess would you be able to give like a ballpark figure of how much an insurance would cost when you have a contract of that range, or do you have any sort of similar examples from the past that you?
I can give you an example actually of that. So something like that wouldn't be considered expensive, but let's say it's not just based on the type of consultancy, but also the limit of indemnity, if you will. So if it's like let's say it's up to 2 million, it can go up to 8,000 dirhams, 9,000 dirhams, like this, plus minus. Don't quote me on this one, because but if you're looking for a range, if you're talking the limit of indemnity is between 1 to 2 million, we're talking between 5 to 10K.
Okay. I can actually vouch for that, because last week we had one of our clients looking into a PI insurance policy, and same thing, he got a number of quotes, and as you said, Ramzi, it was between 9 to 12. So 9 on the bottom and 12 on the top is what we got from 3 different providers. So
well, I hope you can call us next time. They can 800 Petra. They can call us.
Yeah, we'll do.
Ramzi, I think this question is for you. It's a goalie who is asking, how is the insurance industry in relation to SME businesses placed after the pandemic, and how long will it take for it to recover?
Well, the insurance industry, I don't think, it's a good question. Insurance industry recovery, for me, I didn't see much of a bad situation for the insurance industry. I think what it comes down to is business management for the insurance industry. I'll give you an example, working from home. We did a great job, thankfully, working from home, and we were able to attend to requests or still claims, business as usual, and I felt that for the insurance industry, a lot of the brokers, honestly, and some companies, they just let go of staff in my opinion, for no reason. It was a bit too premature to let go of staff in April and March, in my opinion, right? And that's, people have their own opinions about that, but that's mine. And what happened was the service levels went down, and then I felt that the insurance broker industry, which is quite a few brokers, dwindled down to a quarter of active working brokers, and which is good for me and good for brokers like me who are able to attend to their services, right? Now, so I don't see damage to the industry. Now, here's what the thing is. There's a lag effect of COVID. I think there's like 25% less people now enrolled in schools, kids that are enrolled in schools. That's what I got from the KHDA. And that means there's 25% potentially less people to insure. And if businesses are out of business here, obviously there's less clients for us, right? And the more people we have in the UAE, the better for us and for every industry, actually. Right?
Exactly.
So that's the bottom line. Yeah? So I think it's just a matter of, it's a worldwide thing, and I'm really happy. Honestly, I'm blessed. We're blessed to be in Dubai specifically. They've done a great job of managing everything and opening up with some measures as well. So I don't see the recovery being that slow as compared to other markets, specifically in Europe.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, just to go back to Faisal's question. So he basically said that his client wanted a PI insurance. So how much would it cost if the contract was $50,000? Was it 5 or 10,000 dirhams approximately?
Between 5 to 10. So it depends on how much you want the limit of indemnity, right? So it just And he can make up to 5 million, it can go up to 15K, but it's between 5 to 10 based on the average that we have. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm just going to give you a chance now, Ramsey, to do some shameless self-promotion. We have a Deuce who's asking if we can recommend any insurance companies for freight forwarders. Is that something that Petra can help with?
Well, one thing I tell my team and people, if there's anything to do with insurance, the answer is always yes, and then we'll figure it out later. But the truth is, the answer, we do all that. We're brokers, so we have agreements with 50 companies. Some companies are specifically experts with medical insurance, so they don't do anything else. Others are experts with marine insurance and business insurance. So yeah, we have a lot of clients that do freight forwarding, and we have it's up our alley as well. So yeah, we can definitely recommend some. But I think before recommending insurance companies is basically, let's get some proposals going and compare those proposals and why this is the best value for money proposal for you.
And by the way, I will tell everyone who's on the webinar that we will send out both Ramsey's and Suraya's contact information later, so you will be able to get in touch with them as well if you haven't already gone and checked out their websites or their LinkedIn profiles. I'll post them again in the chatter very shortly. I thought I already did, but you might not be able to see them. So I'll post their website links again very, very shortly. There's another question from Quran, who's on the webinar as well, who's asking, can you design a policy to cover decreased wages during Ramadan? Is that Ramsey or Suraya? Do any of you have an opinion on that or advice?
Ramsey, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, the answer is no. You need to be honest with you. Like, I haven't seen anything like that. It's a very specific type of request. I've never. Very creative, though.
I was trying to say, yeah.
Very creative. No, no. I haven't seen that specifically like that. No.
Okay. Well, if you don't ask,
That's good. Could lead to something else, right? Could lead to something else in the future. You never know. Yeah.
Exactly. And I just wanted to say I've posted the links now to Legal Circle's website and Petra's website as well in the chatter. So definitely go and do have a look. Let's jump on to the next question. We have 5 to 6 minutes left, and we still have quite a few to get through. So let's see how many we can manage. But Suraya, this one is for you. It's from Thomas, who is asking, are there adequate laws for regulating insurance in the UAE?
Yes, absolutely. So there are definitely laws that both cover the insurer and the insured, and we see lots of those. And we see that in the insurance domain, there's actually been quite a lot of updates too in terms of the amendments of the existing laws and resolutions and regulations to clarify the laws. So, for example, in July 2019, the resolution came out where it provided a lot more clarity and specification around the mechanisms to make insurance complaints and where you needed to go, how you needed to do those, and the process that you need to follow. We see that, insurance overall, so insurance companies, insurance brokers, they're regulated by the law as well, heavily regulated. It depends, again, where they're based, so whether that's in the free zone or the mainland. But regardless, there are laws in both those jurisdictions covering both insured and the insurer. I can absolutely, rather than today, rattling a whole list of laws that apply, they're all numbered and they all have different numbers. So what I can do is, if anybody's specifically interested in knowing what the laws are, I can give them a complete list of laws that govern that space. But yes, I'd have to say that over the years, UAE has the regulatory and legislators have had a good run in trying to make that industry very robust. And Ramsey can comment about how they regulate insurance brokers, but on the whole, yes, there are laws. They are very clear, and they're accessible in English and Arabic for those who wish to read them.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And now I've been promoting both Petra's offer today and Legal Circle's offer today, and now I want to do a little bit of shameless self-promotion as well. For Virtuzone, we also have a limited time offer, believe it or not. So go to the offer section as well. It's called VC for Life. It's basically we can set up your business and secure visas for your family of up to 4 for 25,995 dirhams a year. If you don't need 4 visas, if you need less or if you need more, we can of course help you out as well. I know there's a lot of existing business owners on the call today, but there also seems to be some that are looking to set up businesses. So do get in touch with us. We just have a couple of minutes left, so let's jump on to the next couple of questions. Ramsey, this is for you, and I think we touched a little bit on this earlier, but it's from Ethan, who's asking, when is the right time to take out a business insurance policy?
Yesterday. If you have a business, don't delay it. It's something that you should at least, at the very minimum, do your homework on and see what's out there and make a decision, right? So of course the key is budget as well. So for me, it's a no-brainer to get insurance, and there's different types of business insurance where there's different parts of the business insurance. You got to look at the business interruption. If you're a salon, for example, there's a specific liability clauses in there that need to be covered, plus many other things. So definitely got to look at all types of insurance. And if you want to start small, you don't have to go big and get the most expensive policy out there, but get covered, get used to that, getting covered every year, the budget for it, and start like that. You don't have to be top of the line insurance and robust coverage and everything. It just has to be done in that way. And that goes also for life insurance. And people they think life insurance is expensive, but it can go very, very low per year, and it becomes a no-brainer. You start somewhere, right? So
thanks for that, Ramsey. We have a question here from Bernard, and this one is from you, for you, Suraya. But you touched a little bit upon it earlier as well, Ramsey. But Bernard is asking, what is the mechanism for making a complaint against an insurance company?
Yeah, very good question. So recently, last year, the law was amended, and there was a resolution that came out that really clarified the mechanism. So if you do have a claim now against an insurer, what you need to do is go to the insurance authority website, make a complaint online. There's a mechanism in terms of there now is a committee that has been formed to hear all the complaints against the insurers. And the idea is that you put your claim to a committee that is heard. They will look into the evidence, they will look into the claim, they will look into the policies. They even have the discretion to ask the insurance and also the insured to come to the party, to the meeting, to try and resolve matters amicably. So there's definitely now a mechanism for making that complaint. Of course, this is in the case that there isn't a clear arbitration clause that governs the agreement between you and the insurer, but there does need to be a specific one and separate from from the policy itself. So otherwise, all mainland complaints would have to go to the IA, go before a committee, and they would look into that before then you take it to the local courts if you wanted to appeal their decision. So that was an interesting development last year. Yeah,
thanks for that, Suraya. And I've just added another link in the chatter to Legal Circle's website where you can go and check out the packages that they're offering. We will also send the links to both Legal Circle and Petra's website, as well as their special offers to everyone later. So don't worry, you won't miss out. Ramsey, I think we can just squeeze one last question in, and I think it's a very good one from Machi, who's asking, how do you determine the best coverage with the best value?
Well, value for money is everything, and that's when I said earlier about covering your basis. So Suraya has always talked about this in this webinar very clearly, like what is your need for your business? So that's the first step, is knowing what exactly you want and asking the right questions. So the best value money, so let's say the best value for money policy, let's pretend the policy is 1,000 dirhams, all right, whatever that is. And again, I don't quote me for that cheap of a premium. I'm just saying as an example, 1,000 dirhams. And then there's like 30 exclusions and there's 10 benefits. So you have to know what you want in terms of what your business is all about. So if those 30 exclusions are reduced to 20 exclusions for 1,100 dirhams, for example, like there's an increase in premium when you reduce the exclusions, that could be negotiable. You could have a better value for money policy. Also benefits, like if you can increase or extend the benefits a bit for little or to no premium additional premium, that will also increase the value for money into the policy. So the key is working with your broker, because they know how to negotiate and they will know what your needs are. The better brokers are the ones that are proactive on your behalf, but also you got to be proactive and kind of gauge and just kind of poke the bear a bit to see what's out there in terms of how you can get the best possible policy out there. We've had some really shrewd clients out there that impressed us with, we didn't think it was possible even us as brokers who are experts in the market. We're like, no, we've never seen this before. And like, please try. And we're like, okay, we'll try, because we actually care. We try, and we actually got it done. And we're like, okay, wow. And we learn so much from clients every day, right? That's the key, is just kind of not being stubborn. We try, and then we see what happens. And then, and that's great. And then they can lock in that premium year on year, unless there's a claim. That's a different story. Okay.
I think with those words, we already got through 1 hour of insurance for SMEs. I would like to thank everyone who joined the webinar today. Thanks for all the questions you submitted in advance. Thanks for all the questions you submitted during the webinar. I think we got through 95% of them, so apologies to the last 5% if we didn't make it. I would like again to highlight that both Petra and Legal Circle has special offers for everyone who attended today. We will be sharing them via email later, so don't worry. Feel free to reach out to Ramzi and Suraya directly. We will make sure to include that contact information as well. Suraya and Ramzi, I'd also like to thank you for taking an hour out of your evening today to share all your knowledge and insights with us, as well as answering all the questions from all our attendees today.
Thank you
very much. It was awesome.
Thank you so much. And we have another Virtuzone Academy Q&A coming up next month, which will be all about how to start your business. So a little bit of a different topic, but it's going to be absolutely interesting as well. So thanks to everyone who attended, and we'll see you at the next one. Take care.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.